the webinar has started. I want to thank everybody who is joining us via Facebook and via this Zoom webinar. My name is Stacey Cochran, and I have been a volunteer with the Arizona International Film Festival since 2016. This year, I am actually a filmmaker, and so I have kind of come through the process quite a bit and have lots of great questions for our filmmaking team from the Beehive. The Beehive will be screening tonight at the screening room at 8 p.m. So if you're watching this and you're in Tucson or in Southern Arizona, please do come to the screening room tonight at 8 o'clock. And the filmmakers will be in attendance, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's correct.
So yeah, well, first introduce yourselves a little bit. This is the first time for folks watching at home. This is the first time we've met, I think. So introduce yourselves a little bit and tell us a little bit about the Beehive.
Yeah, for sure. My name is Alex Lasheras.
I'm Arun Fryer. I'm the producer, and Alex is the writer, director, producer, and editor.
Yeah, and there's one other producer that's not here, Mike Johnston.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're both filmmakers from Vancouver, BC. I sort of went through, I would say probably too much schooling in film. I got over schooled, and I went through Vancouver Film School, and then I also went through the University of British Columbia there. They had a film program. And yeah, we made our first feature together. Actually, we were just talking earlier, it's probably been 2016 it premiered at the Vancouver International Film Festival.
That was called Cadence.
That's right. And so this is our second feature, our second go at it. And we actually shot, well, I guess we can get into that after. I'll let Arun,
yeah,
if you want to say anything.
Sure, yeah. I'm Arun Fryer, also from Vancouver, Canada. I'm an instructor at Vancouver Film School, and I also make movies on the side as well. And we're just thrilled to be having our world premiere here at the Arizona International Film Festival. It's going to be the first time we've ever watched the movie with an audience, so it's an exciting day.
That is exciting. So, but you've been through this once before with the 2016 film. So how do you feel? How do you process your emotions when you're sitting there and the lights go down and the heart starts thumping and you're in that audience? What is that like for you as filmmakers?
Well, I can't remember who originally said this. It could have been Steven Soderbergh or somebody, but he said, you never watch your movie for the first time when you watch it with an audience. So I'm actually really excited just to see how people respond to it, see if the funny parts are funny, see if the scary parts are scary. It's nerve-wracking, of course, but it's also exhilarating. It's a lot of butterflies, of course, but it's also just, I mean, this is why we make movies, is to get them out to an audience. So there's nothing better than attending to a festival to watch a movie with an audience. It's largely why we do it.
All right.
Are you excited or nervous?
Yeah, no, we're super excited. I think what's also interesting is to be able to premiere it away from home.
Yeah.
And we've just we arrived here yesterday, so we've just been soaking up Tucson, and it's just, I mean, I also just want to actually just take the chance to plug the Arizona International Film Festival and say thank you so much for programming our film. You guys have been super hospitable, and it's just been great to meet other filmmakers so far, and everyone's just so kind and generous. So yeah.
And the weather has just been amazing so far for us.
Yeah.
So, well, we're thrilled to have you here. So give us kind of a short synopsis of the story for folks who are watching this, who may not be familiar with it, or who are watching it in the recorded version. Who knows where this will end up? So tell us a little bit about the story and what might excite them to come and watch it.
Yeah, for sure. So it takes place on a family farm. It's a single father, and his name's Frank, and his two children, Rosemary and Aaron. And they're living out on a farm in a regular life. And the little girl, Rosemary, she's very exploring kind of child. And when she's out into the back forest, she discovers what she thinks is a beehive. She labels it Be the Beehive, but it's when she's out into the back forest, she discovers what she thinks is a beehive. Hearing some
Got a bit of a delay there.
Yeah, hearing some playback. She discovers what she thinks is a beehive, but it turns out it's actually an alien nest that's growing on the side of a maple tree. And so every time she goes back to visit the hive, it's grown a little stranger. And she kind of has a moment of, I would say, transformation, where she treats it as innocent at first, but every time she comes back, she starts to sort of recognize that maybe this actually is a threat. Yeah.
That's a great introduction, and it has this wonderful balance of there's a lot that the actors have an opportunity to kind of sink their teeth into with this, but there's also some pretty tense moments of suspense throughout. I just thought it was really phenomenal, and I can't wait to see it tonight at 8 o'clock at the screening room. Another plug in for that. So tell us a little bit about working with this phenomenal cast, and I'm especially interested in this extraordinary young actor, Meadow Kingfisher.
Yeah, I would start off by saying we lucked out when it came to our casting process. We went through a lot of casting, but there was only the best talent really came to the surface. And Meadow is terrific, along with Caden Gibson, who plays Aaron, her brother. And Meadows from Alberta, but so maybe not so many viewers are familiar with Canadian provinces, but that's we're from British Columbia. That's where Vancouver is, and then right next door is Alberta. And yeah, so she actually came in from she was the one who came in on a road trip with her mom from Edmonton, Alberta, and yeah, she just did a stellar audition. It was one of those things where, like, from this person belongs on screen from the get-go. Yeah, what more would you say about the casting process?
None of them at the time were union actors. These are all non-union actors, and we were pretty deliberate about casting non-union actors. And so we were a little nervous that we were going to find the top talent, but everybody that ended up in the movie, they were just fantastic just people as well. And the Aunt Zoe, the actress who plays Aunt Zoe, this is her first time ever being in a movie as well. I mean, it's her screen debut. Same with Caden as well. He doesn't have many talents, and he knocked it out of the park. And the father, Stephen J.F. Walker, one of the anchors of the film. It just remarkable performances from everybody. And we were so thrilled with how everybody just acted on set. And we think the results speak for themselves. But Meadow in particular, wow, she was a powerhouse. Her whole family came and visited sets. We realized her younger sister looked like her, so we could use her for some body double stuff as well. And we even ended up, her youngest brother has got a line in the film. It was a real family affair in the end. It was just a lovely, lovely family.
That's phenomenal. Again, the filmmakers are with the Beehive, and it'll be screening tonight at the screening room on April 22nd, 2023 at 8 p.m. in Tucson. So yeah, as moderator, I was sort of told to talk a little bit about the making of. So this is really about the nuts and bolts of how the film has been made, and I'm especially interested in that. And if we have aspiring filmmakers in the audience, of course, they'll eat this stuff up. Hopefully, it's interesting to everyone. But if you have questions, feel free to post those in the chat, and we'll get them to Alex and Arun. So tell me a little bit about, did you have much of a rehearsal time with these actors? Did they inform the script? Was the script kind of locked when you were doing casting? How did that process work?
Yeah, we didn't change the script too much from the way it was written. I would say maybe we changed more to do with we shot in summertime, and actually the original script was written to be a lot more night scenes, but we because we were shooting in summer, it just wasn't feasible production wise to be shooting at nights, because at least in Vancouver region, the nighttime is just not long enough, isn't enough shooting hours. So there had to be some scenes that had to be rewritten and re-scripted in that way, to just sort of be more for daytime. But when it comes to the actors and rehearsals, yeah, we rehearsed definitely a few times. What was actually the best thing is that the actors actually came out to, we shot, I should mention, we shot on my family farm. And so that was like, actually, this is an anecdote. Kevin Smith said that if your parents own a liquor store, then you write a movie that takes place in a liquor store. So taking that to heart, parents have a beautiful farm, and so we shot there. Basically the whole movie is set on this one location. Yeah, so that was great. That when we were actually doing rehearsals, we just brought the actors out to set, and we just rehearsed on site. And the great thing about that is that you discover along the way. You know, you'll be shooting a scene, and then you'll say, okay, in this part, the dad goes into the washroom, and he slams the door, and he starts barricading himself inside the washroom. When we're trying to rehearse that, there's like a staircase there, and he goes up the stairs, and it looks, something's not working, and maybe it looks awkward, maybe it doesn't work. So then you have to, for filmmakers, it's what's called blocking. You're blocking your actors. You're figuring out and within the space, where are they moving, where are they going to go within each shot. So when you're doing that blocking, it's really important when you're on set to sort of see, okay, this is my space. It doesn't make sense for him to go up these stairs. Why don't we just use this washroom right here? He's not going to go up the stairs. So those sort of things are things that you just work through in the process, for sure.
So it sounds like there was quite a bit of rehearsal time that the actors were able to find their way into the physical space, and that perhaps informed their performances somewhat.
Absolutely. I mean, different filmmakers, I'd say different directors have different processes when it comes to rehearsal. Some directors believe that you know, they want it to be completely organic, and that by rehearsing, you actually take out the energy of the liveness of shooting and action and all. I'm from the other camp of directors, where it's just like, I love rehearsing. You discover things along the way. You feel, the actors feel they feel warmed up, and they feel prepared. And that's what it really is that they go in and they feel like we're all on the same page. We know what we're after in the rehearsal process.
That's great. So couple of questions in mind. Do you, as a director, do you see yourself more as, do you have a favorite child, so to speak, in terms of cinematography, in terms of production design, in terms of working with the actors? Are they all equally loved? And you have to be honest with that question.
Do I have a favorite? Sorry, I didn't.
Oh, as a filmmaker, do you tend towards favoring cinematography? Do you tend towards working with the actors? Do you have a first love, so to speak, when you're going into production?
That's a really good question. Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say I tend, I mean, I feel like you put me into a spot, into a corner, because I think your first responsibility as a director is to the actors, and it's to the performances. I mean, the DP, the director of photography, is the one who's he's focused on the image. But of course, when you're rewatching scenes and everything, you're gonna say like, oh, something's off with the image or something. But definitely, like, I'm more focused on the performance, 100%. And if the performance is there, then everything else can sort of fall into place.
And building on that, we had an outstanding team, like in terms of our cinematographer, Peter Stathis. I've worked with him on a few projects, and he's just he has the eye for it. So sometimes it's just nice to trust in the process and trust in the crew that they're all collaborating together, that everybody has each other's back. And when you're working with people like that, the process becomes fun, and everybody is all just focused on making this one thing together. A friend of mine, he said, making movies is like 100 different people doing 100 different things all at the same time. You're hoping it all works out. But when you have 100 phenomenal people all doing great things all at the same time, that's when the results really come through on screen.
That makes me think of another question. Are there any innovative strategies or tools that you're using to communicate with everybody, to keep that game plan and that vision? I mean, aside obviously from the script, but are there, one of the things coming off of a fairly small film production, which will be screening Tuesday night, is just how much communication is required, right? And I'm just wondering if there are particular strategies that you use that are most effective, or things that you've learned through the two different films that y'all have worked on together now.
Well, I think you sort of answered it within the question, which is just communication is so important on set.
Yeah,
it can't be understated, because so much of the time you're running on tight deadlines. You have a limited amount of shooting days, and so your communication has to be, and you go crazy hours. You're shooting and you go overtime or whatever it is, and then people have to drive home at the end of the day and they come back early. So everyone, you start running out of gas and you're working off fumes, and it's one of those things where, we're working with people, so emotions are in there too, and obviously egos and all those things. So you have to keep everything in check. And I'd say a biggest thing is just respect. And when that's a really big thing with indie filmmaking, is that's what me and Arun, and even from our first film, we take is just respecting the team and putting people first. And we actually had some comments from other people who, because we had some the special effects on this movie, we had some people that were working, industry veterans that were working with us, and they came afterwards and they said, like, wow guys, like, thank you so much. Like Vinny, he came and he said, like, thank you guys so much for the set, like, you guys were so respectful. It's like I didn't understand where I was at times. Like it was just a different atmosphere there. So it's like we want, that's why everyone's here, because they love movies. That's why they're on set. So it's like we want people to be having a good time too. But yeah.
And from a production point of view, you talked about communication. I know at least during the shoot, I had at least 5 or I think 6 WhatsApp chat groups going at all times. One's for locations, one's for production design, one is for producers, one is like with the ADs, one's just as a general chat. So you're always just trying to maintain everything and just trying to keep up those communications, because the thing that will destroy a film faster than anything else is miscommunication or lack of communication, because you're just trying to clarify what needs to get done. What does the director want to shoot? What does the DOP need? What does the production designer need for their next set? You're just trying to anticipate all these things. But yeah, just trying to keep it up. And what if it's WhatsApp, it could be email, you name it, but just keeping up those channels at all times is so vitally important.
So true. I got a comment from the chat to ask the audience to submit some questions. So if you're watching at home, please do submit your questions. And on the subject of communication and questions, were there any questions that the actors asked of you that are particularly memorable that helped inform their performances, whether it's motivation or whether it's better understanding the dynamics of these relationships between the father and the daughter, the father and the son, the sister and brother?
Yeah, I would say without getting into like the weeds of it, because some of it gets into even personal things, is sometimes when you're talking to actors, I would say it really depends. One important thing I would say is that it depends on who you're talking to, because everybody's different. So every actor is different. And maybe they're going to find things that are going to work for them that's not going to work with the next actor. And without like naming specific names, for some people on this set, there's actors that can work really well by tapping into maybe a part of their past, maybe an emotion that they had, maybe an experience that they had, Whereas other actors don't want to go there. Maybe they work like a switch. Maybe they just want a cue of what you want, or a better description of what you're going for, a verb or a feeling or something. So that's sort of interesting, is not to think that just because you have a certain idea of how you should be directing actors, like this is how I direct actors or whatever. It's like I feel like you have to meet the actor on the level of how they best, it's, again, you come back to communication. It's about communicating with the actor, so that you're resonating, both you and the actor, to get to where you want the scene to be.
We've got a question from the chat, and then maybe this is more on the producing side of things, Arun. So what is the film funding in Canada like right now? And that kind of dovetails into a question I had as well, about the Canadian tax credit. How useful is it? How well does it work? So
yeah, we're actually very lucky in Canada. Well, there's lots of support for movies. We received our original funding through Telefilm. That was sort of the initial seed that sort of kickstarted everything. And through that initial seed, we got another grant through Creative BC, who are just extremely
like Telefilm, or
Oh, Telefilm is like a government agency in Canada that's receives funding through tax dollars, and through those tax dollars, they get distributed through independent productions and union productions as well. But that's how a lot of producers are able to just get that initial sort of production started, is through some money through Telefilm. And through there, we are able to get a broadcast deal through CBC and APTN, and support through Canada Council as well. So it was really piecemeal from a bunch of different sources. And the tax credits, of course, they were probably about a quarter of our budget. We have both the provincial and the federal tax credits. So BC and Canada each have different tax credits, and they stack on top of each other. So you can get about a quarter of your budget covered just through tax credits alone, which is fantastic. It's a lot of work, a lot of paperwork, of course. Always work with a good accountant, a bookkeeper, and lawyer. But the levels of support that is available to Canadians is actually quite unique, as we found, especially now that we're down here in Arizona talking to other American filmmakers. We realize how lucky we are just to have that support. We don't take it for granted at all. But that's largely how we pieced our funding together, is just through a variety of different streams. But luckily, Telefilm was the first one that came on board, and then as other people saw as the film was taking shape, they got behind the project as well. And now we, in full transparency, we have a Canadian distributor, Game Theory, who have just been fantastic. I can't say enough good things about them. They're sort of an emerging distributor out of Toronto, and they've been eternally supportive. But we're still looking for worldwide distribution, which is one of the fun things about going to festivals. You never know what's gonna come out of this.
For sure. So could you talk a little bit about some of the purposes that you see in festivals? Obviously, getting to see it with an audience for the very first time is an amazing, transformative, hopefully it's a community experience. Meeting with other filmmakers, obviously that's another purpose, right? Doing this kind of Q&A, we're meeting each other, and you're certainly meeting other filmmakers as well. So yeah, what are some of the other purposes that you see with film festivals?
You want to go, or
you can
okay? Well, as you said, I mean, networking. I mean,
yeah.
The cornerstone of filmmaking is collaboration at the end of the day. So we just met some amazing filmmakers this morning at a breakfast, and already we're talking about their films and maybe reaching out to them, and just, it's amazing how much networking gets in. It's hard to make a movie on your own. And then just to be able to meet these other people that, now we know some filmmakers in California. Now we met somebody in North Carolina. You're just always meeting these people, and you never know where the next job is going to take you. And also, once your film is done and you're touring other festivals, reaching out to them, and they can bring their friends. I mean, that's one of the best parts of just coming to these events, just getting to know other filmmakers and getting to know the audience as well. I mean, that's such a highlight, is just talking to audience members. And the nice thing about film festival audiences is that they're there because they love movies. They love supporting movies. It's a different type of audience members that just kind of goes to the local Cineplex and watches the latest Marvel film, which is, I love going to those, but it's a different mentality. It's a different attitude. And you can just tell they genuinely care about supporting the art, supporting movies, and the discussions that you get to have. The Q&A is always a highlight as well. and just to see what other people pick up on the movie.
Yeah, I would say it's inspiring as well to make the next movie or make something new. I think you spend as a filmmaker, you go through all the different stages of production, pre-production, production, then you have post, and then you have festivals. And then when you have, and then distribution after that. But then when you're in this stage and in post-production, I think you're inside your little rabbit hole editing room. It's dark in there. You get into your head about cuts and is it working and all this stuff, and you're trying new things, and then you're bouncing it off the producers, and then you kind of come out of your shell when you come to a festival and you're able to bounce it off real people, an audience, and get real reactions as to, is it working? Is it, how are they reacting to it? Did it work? And so that's really exciting.
And the film festival audience is amazing. I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
we gotta admit that we're diehard fans, you know.
Yeah.
There's a couple of good questions that have come through. Some of this we've kind of addressed a little bit earlier. So I'll try to come back to this. It's a great question from Lisa Burke about rehearsal with the actors, which we talked about at the beginning of this. And then there's another question from over on Facebook about the inspiration of the story. I don't know that we actually addressed that one. So what was the initial inspiration of the story?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think growing up on a farm, you get so much interaction with, I mean, that was just a huge, had huge impact on me as a kid. I mean, I would spend so many hours a day just outside, running around in my imaginary worlds. But you end up interacting with nature. You know, there's coyotes, there's other things, there's, you know, threats, the natural world. But you also just get to see you know, so you see things that are, I don't know if you've ever seen, is it crickets or is it grasshopper? Like they have these exoskeletons. And so I'd be like down at the pond and I would see these skeletons and at one moment as a kid, I'm just like, is this aliens? Like, are we getting, is like, what are these things? Like what, so you, or, you know, just, you know, worms or mealworm, like, you know, different things that are just otherworldly. When you're interacting with them, and you know, might give you the shivers, or you might just have that response to them. Then it just makes you think of like you know, life on other planets, what could be out there, and what possibly could come to us here. So I mean, that's I would say the seed of it, and there's also I've been really inspired by found footage films, you know, growing up on Blair Witch Project, those sorts of things. So the original film was supposed to be found footage, which would have been a totally different taste, and I think that would have, I mean, that's its own kind of awesome. But yeah, we ended up making it in the more traditional narrative sense. But yeah, that was another impetus, is something that would be like a found footage, and then mixed in with these inspirations. And then later on, it just kind of added, there's layers of meaning there. And I think now the final product, you know, there's subtext about how we interact with the biosphere, how humans are, and I think there's different layers too about the father in the story. He has numerous chances to sort of understand what's going on, and he's sort of this he's an anti-hero in a sense, right? Because he's a good guardian of his kids, but at the end of the day, well, I'm not going to reveal the ending, but yeah, things happen.
Things do happen. Yeah. If you don't mind, I'm just going to touch on something that Lisa asked as well. Just a couple of questions. She said, did we film sequentially or out of order? Actually, we shot our ending of the whole film, I think, on day 4 or 5 as well. We definitely did not shoot sequentials. It was all over the map. And I think our first day of filming, one of our lead actors said, oh, I just booked a Hallmark film. I'm not going to be available for any of the days that you have me scheduled. So we had to throw out the schedule, build it brand new from scratch, and you sort of adapt on the fly. We were happy for him that he got a good role. But one of those things, you just kind of, you take it as it goes. I mean, filmmaking is problem solving at the end of the day. Much like COVID, follow up your question, how did you navigate COVID? Yeah, I mean, it's always there. I mean, especially we shot this in the summer of 2021, so we'd been living with COVID for a while. We sort of had industry protocols all set up, but still, it's always one of those. What's going to happen with COVID? I think we
Yeah.
had three different scares. I think our sound
Yeah.
person even said one. Oh, I was at a barbecue yesterday. Somebody had COVID. So, and that was before rapid tests were readily available. So he quickly went to the airport and got a rapid test, and hoping it was going to be negative as he's driving to set, and luckily it was. So there's a couple of those moments, but everybody followed the protocols, kept their masks on, and I mean, the one nice thing about the film community is that if there's a problem, everybody just kind of gets together. There's sort of a classic saying that if there's a natural disaster, who are you going to turn to first? Turn to a film crew. We're used to rolling with the punches here. We'll sort things out. That's just, the show has to go on. So yeah, it was tense at times, but we made it through. And if you look at the COVID rates at the time, we happened to catch it in a bit of a dip. And 2 months later, it just spiked. I think a couple months later, that's when Omicron came out. So we just happened to catch it in this little valley as well, just timing wise. And a lot of outdoor scenes also helped quite a bit. Thank you for your question, by the way, Lisa.
Yeah, those are some great questions, Lisa. And along the same line of those kind of production level questions, working within COVID, what was your production schedule like? How many shooting days did y'all have?
21 days total. Because we were shooting on his farm, it's a bit of a drive from the city of Vancouver. So we tried really hard to limit our shooting days to longer than 12 hours. We're pretty adamant because we knew people had to drive home as well.
And
We
we had
didn't
a
want,
child.
we also had a minor actor, and so they're only limited to 8 hours a day on set. So
Yeah.
we try to keep things, it's also independent filmmaking. We're not paying a lot of overtime, if at all. So you can't just make up for it with more money. So we tried to be quite respectful of the crew, and they really appreciated that. We also, if people are driving home after 12 hours a day, they got to drive an hour home and drive an hour back to set. So you want to be respectful of safety, of course. So yeah, I think the longest day was only 12 hours. I think maybe we went 12 and a half one day. And even then, it's all fairly democratic. Yes. Who wants to stay? Everybody said yes, so we kept on going, but we don't just come in and say, oh, we're going to do this. We tried to make sure that everybody's on board with it.
You know, it's fascinating to watch the film too, and that sense of community spirit and support it's embedded in the story itself. I mean, the story is ultimately, it's about the support that each of these family members has for one another, even the Aunt Zoe in the story, her role in this, and that comes across, you know, in the story. And so it's fascinating to, you know, to imagine. Well, it sounds like to me that that's just part of your own kind of way of viewing collaboration and working with the world, and then it sort of translates into the actual narrative film itself.
Yeah, I guess that's the hope, that you can actually see the results on screen. That it's. I'm glad you picked up on that. Actually, I hadn't considered that before. Yeah, I guess there is a sort of a strong sense of community, even within the neighbors and that whole party scene, and just with the way that they support each other.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got to ask the question as a guy who's screening his first short film at a major film festival. The next step for me is figuring out how to work with executive producers. So tell us about the phenomenal executive producers that you had on the Beehive, and how you built a relationship with them. And yeah, any advice that you could give to a filmmaker about working with executive producers, about finding those execs to work with.
Yeah, I mean, we had a couple executive producers, or three, I should say, on our film. One of them was actually, he was the person that was a producer that I mentioned that we started on this script about 10 years ago, and we were trying to find funding at the time, and didn't come through. But to just honor the contribution that producer gave to the project, he's been honored as an executive producer. That's one of them. But at least in our terminology, executive producer, it's somebody who advances the project. It can be, you know, maybe they give a location, maybe they give seed money, maybe they open a door for you. an executive producer it isn't necessarily a producer that's there from start to finish, but there's somebody that plays a really important role along the way. And so the first person I mentioned was Nicholas Ayerbe Barona, and then our other executive producers, Sushant Desai and Michelle Morris, who Michelle has been a veteran filmmaker, producer in Canada,
And assistant director as well.
and did many years as an AD. Yeah, she helped us enormously with communicating with broadcasters.
Yep.
And so that's another thing is we were fortunate enough to get some pre-sales of the film with Canadian broadcasters, which allowed us to sort of, as Arun was mentioning it, in Canada, it's sort of like a domino effect. You start off with people get their telefilm money, and then that's, you sort of think, oh yeah, now we're going to make a movie, but no, that's actually just the beginning.
Yeah.
That's sort of what we discovered. It's like, that's a quarter of your budget. Now you got to figure out how you're going to do the other 75%. So then you sort of you do the rounds, and you make meetings with different people at the top of these broadcasting people, executives. And then yeah, so we had meetings. Michelle was
Yes.
part of that. She was in those meetings, and Sushant, I should say, played a really critical role. He's just phenomenal with numbers. So as Arun was saying, it's tax credits come into play, but how you're able to calculate those tax credits, it gets, in Canada, it can get extremely complicated, because you can get it can get broken down into, well, it's not just that you're shooting outside of Vancouver that gives you some tax credits. If you move 100 kilometers further, you can get some more tax credits. So Sushant, he's a whiz with Excel and everything. He created some excellent Excel documents that actually were able to help us, like if we changed our budget a little, how much more tax credits or this or that, that helped phenomenally in also convincing these people that open doors that this was a project that you can trust, that you're going to get your money.
Yeah, it really takes a village to make these things, and they both had different strengths that they brought to the project. I mean, Michelle, as Alex mentioned, just helped us navigate the whole networking system of these broadcasters and different production companies that we weren't as familiar with. But because she has all the experience, she knew the people, she was able to set up meetings. She was so instrumental in just making those connections happen. And then behind the scenes, Sushant was just this whiz at putting this budget together that I think if other Canadian producers had his template, they would drool over it, because it was just so intricately set up, and it was amazing to watch it all sort of come together.
That's awesome. I love this nuts and bolts sort of stuff. This is exactly where I'm living and breathing right now. So thank you for that answer, for sure. Switching back to the other side, the production side. So tell us a little bit about your cinematography. You mentioned your cinematographer, your director of photography earlier by name. Maybe mention him again. And then how did you collaborate with your director of photography? How early on in the project, pre-production, are you talking with your DP, and what kind of input do they put into it? Yeah,
I think our DOP was our first crew member that we hired, and we spent months.
That we locked?
Yeah, that we locked. We talked to several different people before we finally landed on Peter Stathis, and it was just really apparent that within a few minutes of talking to him, he was the right person for the job. He just had a certain vision, a certain mindset for it, and just the way that he wanted to take it. He also owns his own production company as well, so he's able to supply all sorts of gear, which also helped as well. But I've worked with him before on several projects, and I knew what we were going to get with him, and the way that he wanted to treat. And him and Alex they seemed to connect almost right away.
Yeah, we had a couple. I mean, this is COVID time as well, but I think it's kind of even past COVID now. We're so on online now with like, even that we're doing this this panel right now online. But we had a couple discussions early on with Peter just about the project, and he was very interested from day one. He read the script, he loved it, and he wanted to be a part of it. Yeah, it's interesting working with any DP on set, because I think, and any filmmaker that's listening can relate to this, which is just that your first day on set, you know, is usually madness, or at least, you know, even inside it could be internal madness, because you're all sort of figuring each other out. You're all new, like maybe you haven't worked together before. You're sort of figuring out, you're all trying to find your rhythm.
Yeah.
Right. And then by the next day, it's a little more, by the third day, and then, you know, by at least on a short film, maybe it happens sooner, or maybe it doesn't happen as fast, or it has to happen sooner. But on a feature, there's a little more length for that to happen. But then you find this groove of working together, and you find the rhythm. So yeah, that's always interesting with working with the key creatives, is that the heads is just sort of like finding your rhythm as you go. And that's the same with the production designer, or, you know.
And we had I think we had a 3-hour conversation just what our aspect ratio is going to be, like geeking out really hard over these, but taking a lot of time and consideration, thinking about what is this going to look like in several years from now? What is the best way to present our movie? And just taking these conversations quite seriously. And it's the fun part. I mean, I'm not complaining by any means, but it's just great to see that level of detail, that level of thought of how this movie is going to be presented, ideally forever.
And we have a question about the film score.
Oh, great question.
From the chat, and that kind of aligns with the question I have as well. So I'll add a little bit to it. You had quite a team with music design and composing. It wasn't just one composer. You had, you had a composer, but then you had music designers as well. So tell us a little bit about their collaboration and how you work with them.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, speaking of executive producer Michelle Morris, Colin Ankerson, who was the film's composer for this, he originally reached out to Michelle, and then she looped us into the conversation. Yeah, he's a fantastic talent. I checked out. He did an album on Spotify, which you guys can listen to if you'd like. And there's one song specifically, Cataract, that if you check that out, check out Cataract, Colin Ankerson. And after hearing that track, it's just like this is the guy for this film. And he did a fantastic film score on strings. And then he actually spent some of the budget for the music. He hired a string quartet. And so, you know, most of the time right now, when you do music, it's all, you know, digital. It's
especially for lower budget indies. It's hard to get actual strings in your movie. Yeah.
So doing a live recording session of a quartet was awesome. He had the connections. He knew people in the music community, and he brought out 4 people. We recorded it at Monarch Studios in Vancouver, and yeah, so sitting in on that, and actually they have that's an amazing experience in itself, because they play the video. So you're watching your movie, and then you see, you know, a cellist, a violinist, you know, doing the actual score live to them. You know, it's like, I don't know if you've guys seen those things where you go watch ET, or you go watch a movie and they have an actual symphony playing it. It's really something.
And then we also had a couple of music supervisors just to fill in like some pop tracks and just some other music as well. And then we also had a fantastic sound designer, Dave Chick, who filled in some of the misses pieces with sound design, and then we had a fantastic mixer, Gregor Phillips, who combined it all together, and the whole sitting on the mix process it transforms it all together. I always find when I'm making movies, you sort of go through peaks and valleys where you love your film, you kind of hate your film, you love your film, and then you just watch it so many times. But then when the sound comes in, that's when I always fall in love with the movie again, because sound it's the glue that holds it all together. And just listening to it all come back, it's just, oh, that's what this movie is meant to be.
I completely agree. That's a great question from the chat. Thank you for that question. So where to go to? Oh, I know what I wanted to ask. You mentioned you're a sound designer. This is more of a nuts and bolts kind of question. So in post, were these people kind of working somewhat separately, or were they working together? Were you kind of getting, Foley work or sound design work, and then yourself, and then tell us a little bit about the mixing, sound design, and composing kind of combination collaboration.
Yeah. We started off working with I would say they were all sort of working together. Everyone is working together. We There was a big part of this. It's funny when you talk about movies, you don't realize how much goes into them. But when you're getting to this stage, there's actually a big component of radio in the movie, and that's all the radio that you hear is you hire the actors, the voice actors. And actually there was a local guy in Vancouver, and he just does voice actors. Like he handles them and directs them and everything. So he came in there, we did a recording of that, brought in a bunch of voice actors, recorded all these radio bits that sound like actual radio. And you were speaking about and then I guess speaking about the mix. During the mix, you're going through things. You could be saying like, oh, we need a better someone slams the door. Well, that doesn't sound really realistic. So then you're writing an email to Dave Chick, the sound designer, and you're saying like, okay, we need a better door slam. Can you give us some options? We need a car backing up. We need this footsteps aren't loud enough. Could you have something more there? So then you're constantly, there's all these emails going sort of back and forth during that process. And I would say one of the most interesting for this film in particular sound pieces is the alien, and creating that something organic, something new, maybe something that people haven't heard before. And so inspiration for that was if you ever watch behind the scenes making of Jurassic Park, you can hear the sound designers go into detail about how because we can't hear dinosaurs from back in the day, how they did these recordings of these different animals, zoo animals, and blended them together to sort of create that creature sound. So that's sort of like the discussions we were having with Dave and everything.
And we also had a top sound recordist on set, our sound mixer,
Yeah.
who was doing a lot of on-set Foley work, such as like a truck driving by. We spent half an hour just recording a truck driving by, because nothing's going to sound better than what you capture on the day. And he was actually also one of our first people that we ever locked in, because we just know how important it is to have good sound. If you don't have good sound, you don't have a good movie. It can look amazing, but unless you have good sound, nobody's going to watch it.
That's actually a huge point about, if you're like just a tip to other filmmakers, when you're on set, when you're filming, when you're shooting on location, grab at the end of the day, everyone is gonna yawn and roll their eyes, but you got to get room tone. You got to go around, like, and anything that you can pick up, wild lines of somebody walked, there was a line that you didn't catch right, like go and do those things. You'll thank yourself 100% in the room, and it's going to save you money too. Later in post.
I'm a firm believer in capturing as much as you can in camera, especially sound. Those wild sound effects, even just footsteps, just follow the feet with a microphone, and just get that on the day. Nothing's going to sound better. Even if you have the best sound library in the world, it's still going to sound better than what you get on set is always going to sound better. So I'm a big fan of wild sound effects, wild lines. Your editor will love those as well.
For sure. I completely agree. And it's something that I'm still learning for sure. When you're sort of along the same lines, but slightly before production, when you're working on the script, are you at that point thinking about sound? Are you thinking about things that might require some Foley work, or does that just happen once you're on set, in post?
Yeah, I mean, Arun could answer this differently. I mean, for me at least, I think it just depends on your process. Some people say just, take the pen to the paper, and don't limit yourself when you're in that stage of creativeness. When you're at the start of just a new project, write just the movie that you want. Don't feel limited to sort of, what I mean by this is just sort of like get into the nuts and bolts of like, oh well, maybe say I can't afford to have this recording or that thing, or bring an elephant into the room or something like that. But then you can sort of afterwards, you can say, well, what can we substitute this elephant for that's going to give sort of the audience the same sort of feelings in that moment that we could afford? And that's the crazy thing too, is that you don't necessarily need to have the elephant. You can get the same emotion and emotional impact from your audience. And you'd be so surprised by this, by maybe shooting it differently, cutting it differently, maybe the line, maybe lingering on a moment a different way, and you're going to have maybe the same emotional impact than if you, or maybe you just allude to the elephant. I just created this elephant.
Now I want an elephant in the film.
I love it. Yeah, I'm still very much learning, but I like putting the script in front of the team very early on,
Right.
way before production, and saying to my sound designer, okay, where do you see sound design within the script? What elements could you add to revise to this? And of course, with the director of photography as well, if you have your team, kind of in place, if you've got, the main crew you're planning to work with.
Yeah, I do know that there was a lot of talk with Dave Chick in particular about what is the alien going to sound like.
Yes.
And we talked about that almost a year in advance.
Yes.
Just going through different animals and different ideas, bouncing ideas back and forth. And he was so excited to just get out there and start recording all these sounds and piecing it all together. For him, it's like a kid in a candy shop. For a sound designer, this is what they dream of, is to create these new types of sounds that's never been heard before. And I think it actually, and there was some very specific moments that we knew that sounded like, I don't want to give anything away, but we knew that there was key beats. That's going to be a major sound cue. We need to make sure we get this one right. And on the day as we were filming, we're like, oh, what is this going to sound like? But it was neat to sort of watch it all together.
Yeah, I would just add, like on a production level, if you have the team in place, use them.
Yes.
If you have your, I know directors say this too as well with editors, throw your script to the editor. They're going to give you invaluable information that you'll take to set, considerations, or maybe you'll rework a scene just because they're going to comment, well, how are you planning on shooting this chase sequence or this action sequence or whatever it is? And then it really gets your mind working. Well, how are we going to shoot that? And maybe they have some ideas of how it's going to cut as well.
Yeah, there's a wonderful moment. I don't want to give too much away, but there's a wonderful moment where there's a music accent where the teens are watching a movie, and there's a cut to them watching this movie, and there's this musical accent. It's kind of like a stinger, suspenseful stinger musical accent that there's almost layers to it. It feels like when I was watching it the first time, I was like, oh, that's because of something that had been happening in the previous scene. But then we watch, it's the teens actually watching the TV. It was just beautifully done. There was like multiple layers to why that sound accent, that music accent was there. At least to me, that's how I interpreted it.
Nice. Yeah.
I'm glad you're picking up. And a lot of that, it was our sound mixer. He did such a nice job of just going through all those beats and just making it complex.
We have just a few minutes left. So if anybody wants to get in a last minute question, please do ask those over in the chat. Oh, I see there is a question already. See, I should be paying closer attention. Thank you for the excellent question here. What's next for the Beehive? I mean, aside from tonight's 8 p.m. screening, let me get a plug in for that again at the screening room here in Tucson at the Arizona International Film Festival. Beyond the film festival, what's next for the film?
Take it away.
Well, we're playing tonight, of course, 8 p.m. at the screening room. One final plug. We actually, next week, we're going up to San Luis Obispo in California. We have 3 screenings there. It's also screening, I think, next weekend at the Julian Dubuque Festival in Iowa. So it's a whole sort of week of Beehive, and we've got a couple more coming up in Canada. We haven't quite announced them, but they're coming up. We also have a theatrical release in Canada, which is going to be playing in at least 6 cities. It looks like that's going to be in October. But until then, we're going to be doing film festivals and more screenings. So this is the fun part. Honestly, this is the best part. And then I think in January, it's going to be online with one of our streamers, and then it'll be on TV after that. So or it'll be sort of rolled out over a couple of different windows over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I'll also mention that if for some reason you can't come tonight,
that's right.
but
Yeah, gotcha.
you definitely should come tonight, because it's a lot better to experience the film in the cinema with public, and that's where movies are made to be viewed. But if you can't for whatever reason, you're working or whatnot, or busy, watch it. There's going to be a virtual, I think it's almost a week of screening at the San Luis Obispo International Film Festival. So you can go onto the events page there and find us and sign up for that.
Yeah, they're doing virtual screenings there.
Not a bad time of year to be visiting that part of the country.
Yes.
Or this one.
Yeah, or this one. This has been amazing. When we left Vancouver, I hate to say it, but it was a cold, rainy day after several months of cold and rain. So this has been just an absolute delight to walk around in shorts again for the first time.
How are you tolerating the sunshine and all this warmth? And
it's like being on another planet.
Yes, it's great.
Well, you anticipated my next question, right? One of my last questions. The film festival, yes, runs until April 30th, the Arizona International Film Festival. This is the 31st. Let me give a big shout out to Julio and Claudia and Mia, TJ, all the team of volunteers who really make this festival what it is.
Yes.
And have been doing it for over a quarter century. In the case of Julio and Mia, just really supporting the arts, the cinematic arts here in Tucson, Southern Arizona, and truly all around the world. I have so many other questions, but maybe I'll save them for after the film tonight at the screening room. Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Stacey.
Yeah, thanks so much, Stacey.
Yeah, and thank you to everybody at the Arizona Film Festival. You mentioned Julio and Mia. I mean, everybody has just been fantastic.
And David as well.
And we did a sound check with him earlier just to make sure it's going to play great. So I can't wait. What is it? 4 more hours. So see how it goes.
Time to have a toast. I'll see you guys tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stacey.
Thanks a lot.
Nice meeting you. I'll see you tonight in person.
Yes.